negotiation. In this program, Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Pack will show you how to transform adversarial confrontation into side-by-side problem solving.
Hello, I'm Roger Fisher, here with my colleagues Bill Ury and Bruce Pack.
Hello.
Welcome to the video workshop on negotiation. All of us negotiate all the time. You wouldn't be in your present position unless you were a good negotiator. People keep asking us, but isn't negotiation natural ability, not coaching? Once you're good at it, can't you just relax? I compare negotiation skills with those of an athlete. Natural ability is terribly important, but the more natural ability you have, the more you will benefit from coaching, from continuing to learn how to do it better and better. The professional tennis players at Wimbledon bring their coaches with them. They keep learning to get better all their lives.
I like that athletic metaphor. The curious thing that strikes me is that if we negotiate so much of our time with our bosses, our spouses, our peers, our customers, our suppliers, our kids, if we're negotiating, say, 50% of our time, and some people would say 90% of our time, the question I have is, if you were swimming, say, 50% of your time, you'd be in the Olympics. And the question I have is, as good as we all are, why aren't we all in the negotiation Olympics? And I think the answer lies in the fact that when you swim, you always have part of your mind focused on your stroke, on improving your stroke, on improving the process of swimming. When we negotiate, we have almost all of our attention focused on the substance, on the terms and conditions, on the price. Well, what this videotape workshop is about going over the process of negotiation so that we can all be in the negotiation Olympics. One difficulty we often have is that the more you negotiate, the tendency is to get better and better at less and less. When the stakes are high, we focus on our most confident skills. That means to get better and better at a few skills and leave others to wither away. We become one-sided, not very flexible or adaptable. Each of us has room to broaden our repertoire of negotiating skills.
And we're not just going to talk about negotiation. Words don't describe adequately what really happens. You're going to be watching a lot of different examples. We're going to be acting in examples, demonstrating what can be done in different kinds of negotiations. Mistakes people make, skills they use. Let's watch the first negotiation.
Mr. Gillum, I've already told you, my position is $14 million. If you want to take the station away from me, that's what it's going to cost you.
Mr. Bryant, our position is $8 million for your share. That's 8 times your share of cash flow. That's fair, that's reasonable. I don't understand where you're coming from.
Well, I get my number $14 million from what I know this station is worth. I'm the one who came in here 5 years ago when it was down and out as number 3 and built it to number 1. I know this station, and I know what it's worth, and $14 million is my share of what it's worth. That's what it's going to take.
Your partners have given me 2/3, an option on 2/3 for $16 million. Why is 1/3 worth $14 million?
My partners have not been around here nearly as much as I have. I'm the one who made this station. I really don't care what kind of deals they cut with you. My position is $14 million because that's what I know this station to be worth. If you want to take it away from me, that's what it's going to cost.
$8 million is argument, Mr. Bryant. That's a take or leave it.
Well, $14 million is my position, and that's a take or leave it.
Does that negotiating process look familiar? Adversarial, deadlocked, telling each other, not listening very well, not trying to understand where the other side is coming from, not treating the people with a whole lot of respect. There's a chance in negotiation to do it differently. We believe that negotiation would be better off if you can treat it as side-by-side problem solving. Both parties share a problem. They think that a negotiated agreement would be better for both than no agreement. And they share the problem of trying to find an agreement that both can live with, and a good agreement, one that doesn't leave potential joint gains on the table.
This whole video is a way of helping you prepare for negotiation, a way to think about it in an organized way, and a way to realize that in advance of negotiation, you can do a great deal that will affect the total outcome. You'll thought about where you're going to end up, and therefore you know where to begin.
In other words, we want you to have always part of your mind focused on the process of negotiation, before you go into the negotiation, during the negotiation, and then taking also a few minutes after the negotiation to ask yourself, what went right here? What went wrong? What could I do differently next time? What surprised me? So that you're learning from each negotiation, because you have so much rich experience that if you can tap that experience and turn it into better and better skills, you will end up, as I mentioned, in the negotiation Olympics.
The point we're going to make throughout this workshop, this video, is to give you a big structure, the basic building blocks of negotiation, what they are, interest, what you really care about, what do they care about, options, what are some possible agreements we could have, let's get the range of what we could agree upon. Standards, how can I persuade them they're being fairly treated? How can they persuade me? How can I persuade myself that I'm being fairly treated, not being ripped off?
People. How do you deal with the people issue in negotiation? Facts. What is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement if you can't sell it? And closure. How do you get a deal? After segment 6 on closure, we'll come back here for a final segment to help you put it all together. Let's begin with segment 1, interest.
Segment 1, interests.
All too often we approach a negotiation like that radio station owner and the buyer, almost as if we were two armies approaching each other from opposite sides of the battlefield. We dig into our positions, $14 million, $8 million, we build trenches, fortifications, no one's going to move, each side knowing full well that we're going to have to somehow dig ourselves out of our positions if we're going to get anywhere near the middle. And so what we do is we dig ourselves out, and we move about 10 feet, and then we dig ourselves in again. I've often wondered why people go through that exercise when the purpose of negotiation is not so much to meet your position, it's to satisfy your underlying interests. And that's perhaps the key distinction in negotiation, is the distinction between what your position is and what your interests are. Your position are the things that you say you want, the concrete things you demand, terms and conditions, dollars and cents, $14 million, $8 million. Your interests are the underlying motivations, the intangible motivations that lead you to take those positions. Your underlying needs, your desires, your concerns, your fears, your aspirations. Those are your interests. There's perhaps no better way to illustrate the distinction between what your position is and what your interest is than to tell the story that used to be told by one of America's first management consultants, a woman by the name of Mary Parker Pollock, who used to like to tell the story of two men quarreling in a library, the Harvard Library as it were. One man wanted the window open, the other man wanted it closed. One man would go up, open the window, the other one would go and shut it. They got into a big quarrel, bothered everyone in the library. Finally, the librarian came over and she asked the first one, "Why do you want the window open?" "I want some fresh air," he said. She asked the second one, "Why do you want the window closed?" "Well, the draft is blowing my papers out." So then she thought about it for a minute. She asked, "Now how can we get you fresh air without you a draft?" And they thought about it, and finally, in the conversation, one person said, "Well, what if we open a window in the next room?" So the librarian went to the next room, opened the window there, provided fresh air for the first person without a draft for the second. Now, in that very simple situation, what the librarian was doing was looking behind each side's position, the concrete things we say we want. In this case, it was an open window and a closed window. Well, what were the underlying interests? By asking the simple question why, she was able to get at the underlying interest in fresh air and no draft. By identifying those underlying interests, she was then able to come up with a solution that met both sides' interests. Note that it wasn't just a split the difference compromise. It wasn't just a question of splitting the difference between the two positions. In this case, a half-open window would have provided too much draft, not enough fresh air. It was a genuine solution of an open window in the next room. And that's what we find successful.
I need a few seconds to find the second.